Okay, Goenawan, can you please tell us, as a leading light of Indonesian journalism, literary and culture and arts scene, and you are a leading figure, just run us through how it all started.
Well, I'm not sure about the light, but yes, I have some years of working as journalist and writer, and it started when I was when I was in high school. I got my poem, actually a translation of a poem, published in Jakarta newspaper, and first 1958. Were you not born, right? Well, then got some recognition from Jakarta Literary Circle by being published in a literary journal called Sastra in the early 60s. But then the situation was very tense. It was the beginning, it was in the years of the guided democracy introduced by Sukarno. When we got our independence, there was a free expression totally. So writings, journalism, poetry were all free. Then in 1958, Sukarno decided to change the political system into a guided democracy. And he became the leaders of the revolution, and the press was controlled, and other expressions were controlled. But political life was so intense, which was just one of the memorable things about that period. So Sukarno was, as the person who decided all things in the country, was more inclined to follow the model of socialist countries, and economy was being controlled, and the cultural section was also being controlled. And at that time, the Communist Party was on the rise, the most organized, the most dedicated people running the party. The problem with the Communist Party was that it has element of Stalinist line in culture. During Stalin time, there was an idea called socialist realism, the idea of putting literature and other cultural activities under the leadership of the party to promote party's policy in creating and promoting the 5-year plan of Soviet Union at the time. But this policy had become very stringent and very repressive. That kind of repression was, to me, alarming. And if it was introduced or enforced in Indonesia, it would kill the cultural landscape. That's why we started to try to argue not to adopt that. So we drafted this cultural manifesto.
We is who in this case?
With a lot of friends, writers. I was young, one of the youngest. I was 23. But there are older writers who were involved. But actually, the young were behind this movement. They all just follow. Me and Arif Budiman and others was behind this policy, it was activity. And then the cultural manifesto was banned by Sukarno in 1964, I think. As a consequence, we were not allowed to write. We had to use pseudonyms. I couldn't get my works published. I couldn't even attend a meeting. It's kind of pariah. That kind of situation lasted until 65. Then there was a coup, was the change of major bloody change of Indonesian history.
But then at the time, LECRA was also active.
Before, LECRA was very active in banning the cultural manifesto. Then in 65, 66, when the Communist Party was purged, LECRA people were jailed or killed and detained, whatever, exiled.
How did it impact the writing scene in the 60s?
That the New Order was not very much interested in literature. They didn't even read books. all those journals are never good readers. But they didn't touch poetry, for example. So poetry was not
Monitored.
And there was no time to monitor for them. There was no instrument. Different from the Communist Party, they had this lecturer who knew what's all about.
Right.
The military didn't know. They just arrest people who were suspicious, they're suspicious of. But you could sense that the debate of things were very restricted, and increasingly so, especially in the newspapers.
And that led to your wanting to become a journalist?
Well, I had to be a journalist to earn money, to earn my living. But I worked and started Tempo magazine with some friends.
But what kind of ideology led you to start this? And did you want to pursue a certain political bent, or just wanted to have an objective magazine?
No, magazine is objective. We wanted to have a different kind of journalism. The language, in Indonesian language, which is very important for us, during Sukarno time was being very much demagogy, so a lot of slogans, acronyms. And during Suharto time was even more. So we wanted to liberate the language, actually. We wanted to have a more lively, free expression. And it also implies that we want to have more ways of expressing ourselves. Because with a very constricted language, you cannot express yourself freely. So Tempo, in a way, is trying to liberate Indonesian journalism from these cliches, written language, also from the temptation of fixed ideas. That's why our way of telling stories are different. And we modeled ourselves to Time magazines, Newsweek, and also in France, L'Express or Der Spiegel in Germany. Yes, the ideology was not political in a sense, but it was also political in another sense. Political in the means that wanting to liberate things for public liberty.
So you had this idea to start Tempo, and you didn't know how successful Tempo would become at that time.
I thought it would collapse in 3 months. My friend said, it's going to collapse in 3 months. Don't worry, we will make a history anyway.
And coming to, the role as you became editor-in-chief for many years in Tempo, how do you assess Tempo in the various governments?
Tempo was banned twice by Suharto. And the second time we didn't want to return. We refused. So some parts of it went underground. Some parts of worked under magazines, etc. We refused to compromise anymore. In the first when we got banned first, we tried to compromise to survive. But the second time I said, no, it's the end of it. Enough is enough.
You were prepared for it to close, despite people losing jobs.
That's what hurt, it's very painful for them, but they are ready. I told them, you have to choose to lose your job and join magazines sponsored by the regime, or join me. And majority of reporters join me, majority of the administrative staff enter the new magazines sponsored by the government. Mm-hmm. And it breaks my heart, actually, seeing people losing jobs. But some eventually got jobs. At that time it was not very easy because the Journalists Association prevented them from getting a job. They could only work in a magazine sponsored by the government. And we refused. And then some young journalists started the Alliance of Independent Journalists, AGI.
As a separate entity?
Yeah, it was very courageous because it was illegal. It was really illegal. We did it very clandestinely, but we announced it. We published it in a magazine called Independent, without license. And in the end, our friends were arrested, jailed. But we made a statement, and it was important to do that. And people said I started AGI. No, the young people started. I just followed.
You supported it.
That's they are courageous. And courage was infectious, like fear.
Right. Goenawan, you talked about a lot of challenges that you've gone through, many decades. Can you tell us more about your motivation? What pushed you? Why were you so persistent in your beliefs and your principles?
It's a very hard question to answer, because sometimes I'm not aware. You're never aware of what motivates you, right? But there was a time when I tried to answer that. A minister of the government of Suharto asked me, why did you refuse to compromise? And suddenly I said, because of my self-respect. And I was shocked. And maybe that was my motivation. I didn't really think about it before. But there was a time also when Prabowo and his family offered to bail out Tempo with the condition they would control Tempo, and we refused.
What year was that?
Right after the banning, 1994. We refused. And it meant we knew that was going to be the end of Tempo, because who would think that Suharto regime would collapse in 5 years? We thought, when we started the underground, we thought they would survive 25 years. So we were really ready for a long haul. But then when we refused, and the first thing I thought the first thing that come to my mind before I made a decision was my children. They were young, but I don't want to see me as a coward. And there are principles we have to fight. My father died for that. So that.
You still feel pretty strongly and passionately about it. People were trying to repress you, and you.
No, in a country where corruption is so rampant and repression was so easy to be practiced, people all started to lose their self-respect. Right. And then everything could be negotiated and
by money.
Money and fear. And increasingly, there's a loss of hope. I don't believe that. I'm not an optimist. I'm not a pessimist either. For me, pessimism and optimism are irrelevant. I always believe in that hope is not something you expect to come, but something you have to create. The Chinese...
Lucian,
I say that hope is not it's like a road in the woods. It was not there before, but when many people walk on it, the road was open. That's my belief. And I believe that if you did something for the common good, you created hope. Because if you started to compromise and only think of your safety, people get really pessimistic about the nature of other people. What is bad about corruption is not taking money from the public, destroying social trust. You cannot trust your friends because of corruption. You always talk with people and you think that they are going to buy you or you're going to buy them. That's very bad. And that's what's happening and what happened in Indonesia. That's why you have to insist that it should not happen to you and your friends and your family.
So did you lay down the law for Tempo reporters never to accept money on the job? Was it part of the rule? Yeah,
it was. It's always been there, and we are not the first, but it's very.
But it was very common practice.
Yeah, accepting money, bribes. Yeah, here journalism.
journalists.
Yeah, we actually Mukhtar started to clean it up, but he didn't create a system. I think Pekao Young and the Kompas did it, but we also followed that step. But then we created a system how to prevent that from happening. And besides telling, you tell your journalists not to get bribed, but if you don't have a system to monitor or to prevent it may not happen. And luckily we could create a system and also a sense of solidarity. Mm-hmm. That's very important when you talk about leadership is solidarity.
Mm-hmm. And talking about the leadership qualities, I'd like to ask how you assess the different leaders in the different times of Indonesia, starting with Sukarno. Mm. He was the father of unity, and he united Indonesia, but then he became quite leftist. Was he the type of leader that Indonesia needed at that particular time to rally against the Dutch?
Well, I always believe that leaders do not create people. People create leaders. And Sukarno didn't shape Indonesian consciousness. Indonesian pain and hope became part of his rhetoric, and that's why he became a very effective leader, because he could grasp that.
But he was very charismatic as well.
Yeah, he was charismatic. The problem with Sukarno was not a very good manager. CEO was very entertaining speaker and very, very smart. Mm-hmm. It's incredible, and also a lot of ideas.
But he was captivating.
Very much, very much. I remember when I was a kid, every 17th of August, his speech was broadcasted all over the country through radios, and people would stand around the radios listening to him. Every part of it. So it was part of the Indonesians' religion. You have this person who really captivated you from time to time. Then we have Suharto, who is a very good manager, CEO, first class. But he started his regime, his administration actually, from violence. Right. He killed, many people were killed and jailed. So it was rather easy for him to run the country in that kind of fear. Why did they manage to rule the country so long? Because of fear. And Suharto made use of that, and sometimes very effectively. But as many leaders are, he was also weak in his handling with power. The longer he stayed, the less careful he was. So the children started to be annoying and corrupt, and the regime, which was based on fear and corruption, Suharto not only scared people, but only bowed people. And that kind of regime was basically weak.
So it grew weaker as he became more powerful.
Also because, if you had the support of just military and people you bought, the basis was empty and very easy to crumble.
No foundation?
No foundation. Then he collapsed. And I thought he would stay, his regime, not him, for 20 years, but actually after 5 years, after the banning of temple, he fell.
And after Suharto, in the Reformasi period, were there any outstanding leaders?
Habibie was very brave. He was very ambitious. But it turned out that he did a lot of good things. Like the press became free under him. Right. Political parties became free under him. East Timor was being free under him. In the case of the press, he was aware that it should be free. Basically, he was a very nice person. He has no bitterness, and he was very gallant when he was defeated by Gus Dur. He sold Gus Dur to the chair of the presidency and the parliament. The first time ever a defeated leader in Indonesia handed this power gracefully. That was Habibie.
And coming to SBY, people said that his first term was much better than the second. What happened?
That's a mystery. But that, again, a proof that the theory that the military academy was the place where leaders were created was wrong. The myth was not true. It was false. I mean, it's a false myth. Because all the graduates from the military academy were bad leaders. See, Prabowo, SBY, what else? Who else? Military officers only be effective because you have soldiers who are trained to say yes.
To obey.
To obey. When you become a political leader, you deal with different kind of people. And that's going to be very difficult. It's very smart. It's incredibly smart. Well spoken. But he was, I think he tried to please too many people. At the end, I don't know what happened to his second term. He should have been more forceful or experimental. No, he didn't. Basically, was not a very courageous person.
Took the easy way out.
I don't think he listened to people well. And that's the problem with leaders. Power not only corrupts, but make you stupid. I think Kissinger who said, power demands make you suffer dementia. I think that's true. And SBY only listened to his voice. I don't know why he didn't run his country as a CEO. Somebody said from the cabinet he was the laziest president. So he
did the least.
He presided a meeting, spoke for a while, and then he never control. Never create a plan. Suharto different. Suharto was very effective in that way. But the best leader is Ali Sadikin to me.
Ali Sadikin.
The best.
When he
leader.
was governor.
Yeah.
Because he dared to do things.
Yeah, he was charismatic. He was very good CEO. He planned things. He supervised things in detail. He managed people. And he was daring to do new things. I think he's the only leader we have really first class.
And he did it for the interest of the nation and not for himself.
No, he was not. He's rich, but not corrupt, not known as corrupt people. No.
Can I move you forward to the current situation now? How do you assess Jokowi as a president? Are you hopeful that Jokowi will be the new breath of fresh air for Indonesia as a leader?
I supported him entirely. He came here with all the musicians here, sit down there, watching songs dedicated to him. And you see the picture there in the Kedai, in the stadium.
Thousands of people.
Yeah, and very cheerful and very peaceful, but very enthusiastic. And nobody told them to come, just came. There was no violence, except despite that Chng, the band was there, many other musicians. Prabowo thought that they were all paid. Nobody could pay them all because everybody would go bankrupt.
Tens of thousands.
Yeah, first-class musicians in the country. They did it free and for Jokowi. Jokowi was an amazing thing. I didn't know. I didn't think he was charismatic. He was not kind of Ali Sadikin, not only handsome, but very proud, dignified. Jokowi was a very humble person. He is. And why he got this thing, I don't know. An Australian anthropologist once asked me, he returned from Australia, from Papua, and eastern part of Indonesia. He asked me, what do you think, what's the mystic of Jokowi? And I said, I don't know. Because when he ran for mayor, Jakarta, I didn't support him. I supported Faisal Basri because he was my friend and he's honest. But I never had antagonized him because I know he did a lot of things in Solo. But I don't think he's charismatic. But the people worship him from Papua to Jakarta.
But he's a common man. He's from the masses.
Maybe because he is authentic.
The real thing.
Sincere and very accessible. And he was there. He's just lovable.
Is he what Indonesia needs at this stage?
That Indonesia elected him? Of course they need him. But I never saw people supported the politician like they did to Sojo. I have a driver who worked for him for the campaign, voluntarily. He distributed leaflet to every single toll road station. He went, created network with Bajaj drivers. And there was and why he did it? He saw that Jokowi did things to Jakarta, the roads. People hasn't done a lot, but you could see it. You know, next to our door is Pasar Minggu. Used to be a chaos. When you pass the street, you couldn't see shops because all the sidewalk vendors crowded. Now it's clean. And next to very close to my place was a swamp. Now become a park in a short time. So he worked hard, and like I hope, but somehow he is captivating. In the last days of election, he was almost lost, right? Suddenly he was reborn. Because people were told, he is going to lose. So many volunteers walked door to door.
Last minute.
Yeah, last minute, all over the country, without pay.
There were some comparisons to when Obama won his election in 2008, when he became president. You think that some kind of similar situation will happen because people later became disillusioned with Obama and think that he was not decisive enough, and it turned out that he was not that great leader of change that he championed?
Well, Obama was a great leader of change, but he was championed by the Republicans. And that's what Obama said to Jokowi in Indonesian, and when they met. He said, in Indonesian, recorded by Tempo. Sama-sama kita.
In Indonesian?
Yeah, he spoke, not very good Indonesian. And Jokowi was comfortable with Obama.
And Ahok is a good leader.
He is. He talks too much, but he's a good leader.
And he's brave.
Oh, definitely. It's like Ali Sadikin. But Ali Sadikin was a Marine. He could hit you. And Mahawa was not a Marine. It's a double minority, but it's incredible.
He stands up for what he believes. He almost gives the impression that he's not afraid to die.
He was not afraid. He was never afraid.
You think
You know, he told me what he did. Told me. He had a samurai sword in his office, and he showed me that. He could fight. He would fight violently if they attack him. Of course, it's a bit dramatized thing, but
yes.
he has no fear. You know, he is very angry, and I can understand, because the bureaucracy is so corrupt in his office. I'm going to tell you how Jokowi deal with bureaucracy in Solo. And I think he did it here in Jakarta, and I think how could experience the same thing. When I met Jokowi first time in Solo, he told me that when he was first elected as a mayor, he entered his office and shocked because so many people work there, no work at all.
Just show up.
Not only show up, there was one woman who cut vegetables for her home cooking to spend time. So he was shocked. He returned to his home and started saying, what kind of office I'm running? And I asked him, how did you deal with it? And I said, well, I couldn't fire him because there's no rule. The civil servant
Cannot be fired.
no, it's a very stupid law, but they already succeeded in defending themselves with it. So he just picked up 5% of the civil servant working for him, chose the good guys, and left the rest in limbo. And how about the women cutting
Vegetable.
I let her do this continuously. Didn't you try to disturb them? No. He said, if I disturb them, they will disturb me. During Alisadikin, when I went to the city hall, nobody looks idle.
Everybody's working.
And Alisadikin created a system which is an amazing system. That's why he's not only a charismatic leader, but a CEO. He could check the revenue of Jakarta just by pushing the button the same time, real time, because he created an information system which is excellent. But then after that, it derailed.
Well, you've done a lot to contribute to the development of your country, we feel. Thank you very much, Goenawan.
My pleasure. It's good to see you again.